All right, good morning. It's the Monday Morning Show. Today on the show, we have a very special guest. You may have seen him on Last Comic Standing and on America's Got Talent. Ladies and gentlemen, comedian Myq Kaplan. Myq, how's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. So, your first...
Happy to be here on a Monday morning.
Yes. So, your first name is spelled M-Y-Q. Do a lot of people say your name wrong?
I'm sure many people do. Most of the people who know me know how to say it, but also I understand if you don't know me and you've only seen it and haven't heard it, it is confusing, and I've brought it upon myself, so I accept it.
Yep. Okay, so you grew up in New Jersey, correct?
That's true.
What was it like growing up there?
I only grew up there, so I don't have anything else to compare it to except for where I've lived since. But it was a pretty basic suburban area. You know, it was outside of New York City, which I would go into New York City when I was a high school kid to see friends and stuff. But otherwise, I was just sort of, in my house and then at school and at the mall and stuff like that. So I'd say my childhood was regular.
Yep. So were you considered a funny kid?
I don't think that I was. I was not super self-aware. I remember saying a funny thing when I was like 12 and making my math class laugh, but I wasn't like, oh yeah, that's the stuff. I'll be doing that forever now.
Yep.
I think I was like in high school and like at summer camp, from when I was maybe like 14 into my early 20s. That's when I sort of found a group of friends who did think I was funny in certain situations, but also we were all funny. And like the same thing in college. Like when I started doing comedy, I remember my friends being like, why are you doing comedy? We're all funny. I was like, now I'd be like, I guess you could do comedy too. There's no rule against it. You don't even have to be funny to do comedy.
Yeah. So you didn't really start until you were in college?
Really not until grad school, which I only went to because I didn't want to get a real job and just wanted to give myself more time to, at the time I thought, quote unquote, get discovered. I was initially trying to be a singer-songwriter. I was, playing the guitar and playing songs I wrote, and some of them were funny, so that's sort of how I got into comedy, which I really didn't start until, I didn't start pursuing it until I was 24.
Oh, wow. So when was your first show, and what was it like?
The very first time I performed at a comedy club was my last year of college, and I was playing a couple songs at a place called The Comedy Studio, which is still around. I think this year in April, it's 20 years it's been in Harvard Square. And the man Rick Jenkins, who I first contacted to get a spot there almost 20 years ago, which is crazy. I think it was probably 1999 or 2000, and I was like, "Can I play some music at your comedy club? It'll be funny music." And he's like, "You can have 5 or 7 minutes." And I went, and other people. I went on the show right after Jonathan Katz, who at the time was like, the most famous person there. He had, had the show Dr. Katz, Professional Therapist, which I'd heard of, and he actually did a musical thing at the end of his set. So I remember the first thing I said was, "I'm here to play comedy music," and I came on after the guy who's the most famous, who also is doing comedy music. So better be good. I don't remember what I said, but it was, I'm sure, nervous and endearing, because I remember everybody was very nice, and it went just fine, at least. I remember having a good time doing it. And years later, I think the program from that night resurfaced. They had like a list of the comedians, and it was him and myself and like some other people who'd gone on to write for Conan and things. And I think Louis C.K. was also on that show, before most people knew who he was as well.
Yeah, that's a heck of a first show.
Definitely. Again, I also didn't know, anybody except for Jonathan Katz. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that comedians were a thing, really. Like, I was like, I'm just going to try to find a place to play my music. This is a building where I can play my music. And that just opened up, this wide swaths of knowledge that now comedy clubs existed, and there this whole world that I'd never heard of that I eventually, a few years later, decided would be my world.
So you started off playing music and doing comedy at the same time?
I mean, since I was in high school, I was playing songs that I'd written. Like I sort of taught myself guitar. My parents were music teachers, so I was playing music my whole life. I played the violin since I was 4. I didn't like it because I was forced to do it. But then when I started teaching myself guitar, I didn't have to, and it was sort of this more, natural fit. Like when you find the thing that you enjoy doing and nobody's making you do it. Like I was practicing probably for hours a day at music, but I didn't see it as practicing because I was like, this is fun. It was playing more than working. And then when I decided, I was like, if I can do this for a living, that would be, my ultimate dream. So that's why I was trying to just, in Boston where I was in school, look around for any place that would let me play music. And so when I found that there was a comedy club, I knew that I had some songs that I thought could fit the bill as comedy, and then I had some songs that definitely weren't. So I was like, I'll just play my funnier songs at the comedy club. But for most of, for those couple years between when I first performed there and when I decided that I was going to actively pursue doing comedy, I was mostly just still playing music and only playing at that comedy club maybe a couple times a year. Though I was sort of interested, I did start writing jokes or things that I thought could be jokes because it was fun to talk in between the songs and make people laugh. Sometimes I would just make stuff up, but other times I'd be like, I think this could be a funny thing. But I would play a song, and then I would call like what happened in between the song, talking until they stopped laughing, and then I would play another song. And it wasn't until like 2002 that I actively started being like, I'm going to go to comedy shows and not focus on the songs. I would probably, like if I went to an open mic where I got 5 minutes, I would tell 4 minutes of horrible joke ideas and then play like one 1 minute song at the end that I knew was at least slightly more likely to get a good reception. And that's what I did for a little while until I didn't feel like I needed to.
So now, in the shows you do now, it's just strictly stand-up comedy?
Generally speaking, yes. I do still, for fun, play music and write songs, some comedic, some not. I have a friend named Myq Kaplan who, he and I, we probably met about 10 years ago and started just playing fun comedy music together, which, he has his career. He's an actor. He's an improviser. He does sketch comedy. He writes. He does all kinds of things except for stand-up now. And I do stand-up. And every once in a while, though, we just get together, have fun, write a song, and then play it sometimes at shows. But generally speaking, if you come to see me do a stand-up show, it will be me talking into a microphone without instruments.
Yeah, okay. How did you develop your style of comedy?
It's sort of hard to answer that. I guess the way that I started, but I'll try. I will try to most difficultly answer your question.
Okay.
I started by just like writing down pretty short things, like, one-liners, I guess you would say or could say. And I would go on stage, at an open mic and maybe try, if I could do like 4 in a minute, I would do like, I'd tell 20 or 30 jokes at an open mic. And some of them would work and then most of them wouldn't. And so I would, take note of the ones that did and repeat those and eventually sort of build up, a set that mostly worked. And then I went through a shift. Actually, when I met my friend Myqa, who I just mentioned, around 2005, 2006, I also met Rory Scovel, who's a super funny comedian who is my friend now. And we were both at the Seattle comedy competition together in 2006. And I saw Rory perform, and he would do, like, a lot of people would do the same set every night. Like, you have your 5 minutes that you're like, this is my good 5 minutes. But he would do something different every night, or sometimes after a joke would end, he would keep telling the same joke in different ways, or like live in the world of the joke, or just riff and, connect things differently. And Myqa, similarly, like when I would see him perform, he would be great with crowd work and riffing and improv and being in the moment. And like when we worked together, that was sort of a nice dichotomy that I would sort of be like, not the straight man, but I was just sort of standing still, just like saying the stuff that I planned, and he was the sort of chaotic, moving around, like the performer, and I was the writer. And we since learned from each other, where I was like, oh, I guess this is a thing that you can do. Like if sometimes it used to be that if I wrote a joke and it didn't work, I would be like, well, I guess that joke doesn't work, and I would sort of leave it. And now, if I write a joke and I go on stage and I say it and it doesn't get the response that I think it could, I might keep saying things. I might, be more confident in the idea and just not be positive that I've expressed it exactly the way that I want or need. So I'll keep, allowing myself to continue to push on in that joke or in the world of that joke. And so I feel like now the way that I do comedy is I come up with ideas that I think are funny, and then I get on stage and I allow myself to, not know exactly what I'm going to say, where it used to be that that's what I did. So at shows where I'm developing new material, it's kind of anything can happen. At shows where I'm, if I'm doing an album recording, then in general, I'll 90-something% know exactly what I'm going to say in exactly what order, though still being open to moments where things might occur to me, because those are sort of, fun, beautiful possibilities. If you have another moment, here's an analogy that I like to sort of describe the way I used to do comedy. I would sort of like pluck snowflakes out of the air and be like, here, what about this snowflake, this cool, unique little idea? Whereas now I'll start with a snowflake and then share that, and then over the course of days, weeks, months, different performances, I'll find like other snow and sort of pack it together into like, hey, what about the snowball? And then keep packing it and then making it into a snowman or snow lady or snow non-binary person, or maybe it'll become into a big snow boulder or snolder if you needn't. But and then you can sort of roll the snowball down the hill, and then it keeps gathering more and more snow and becomes like this giant force. So instead of just a one-liner where it was, years ago, now it's this giant avalanche, this chunk full of all these different snow flakes and balls and men and women and icicles, and becomes this sort of more massive experience. And then I make a sled out of snow, and then I slide on the snow sled down the snow bank, and then I take that to the snow bank and make some money.
So it seems like it takes a lot of time then to develop your material.
I mean, every joke is different, every idea, every story. Like, sometimes a joke will just start as one line and it will stay as one line. Sometimes I'll have jokes from 5 years ago that I'm like, oh, this is, if I can add a new context to this now and stretch it out and pull it and grow it and compact it and edit it. So there are definitely, most of the stuff that I'm doing now is new since I recorded my last special in 2013, I think. But there are still like ideas that I had years ago. Like I'll go back through old notebooks. So it's possible that, a joke that I tell on stage tomorrow could have come from my brain 12 years ago. But for the most part, I would say, if I'm working on a new idea that I like, it could, within days get into some shape that I like, or within weeks there'll be even more, or, months down the line when I'm doing it in a longer set, it might connect to something that it doesn't usually go next to, and so then new ideas. So there's never a sense, there's no exact time, there's no exact situation that's the same for every joke. But yeah, it can definitely take weeks or months to have a joke go from not existing to existing in the fullest form that it might.
Yeah. Okay, well, now before I let you go, we have a part of the show we call Questions from the Fans, and if you don't mind, I'd like to read you a few emails.
I don't mind.
Okay. All right, first email is from Blake Chapman. Who was the best person you have ever worked with, and who was the worst?
That is an interesting question. I don't know that I'm sure that the worst person that I ever worked with was me when I was starting out. I know that might not be the answer you're looking for, but I'm not a huge fan of, like, there's no real reason to, like, if I didn't like a person personally, like, why would I want to give them more airtime? Also, I don't, who am I to pass judgment? Like, I think everyone's just doing the best that they can, and some people have maybe more natural skills, some people put more work in, some people are luckier. So I guess, like, I dated a girl once who was a comedian, and she was, like, slightly more negative in that she asked me once, she's like, I know all the comedians that you like, who don't you like? And I was like, well, I haven't even told you all the comedians that I like, so why don't I get through the list of everybody that I like way before I don't think I'll ever, there's more and more comedians will keep being born and becoming good before I even get to the list of ones that I like less.
Yeah.
And as far as the best person that I've ever worked with, I've worked with so many people that I've loved as, watching, sort of growing up, or if not growing up, like growing as a comedian. I've been fortunate enough to work with like Maria Bamford and Reggie Watts and Louis C.K. and Doug Stanhope and Sarah Silverman, and I feel like I could keep this answer going for much longer than your radio show should go, but those are some of my favorites who I've been fortunate enough to work with, and then like tons of just friends and people who are like awesome that I sort of started out with and then have met along the way. I feel great about everyone I've worked with. A boring answer to your question.
Okay. All right. Next email is from I'm a Player 22. On your record, Meat Robot, you talk about doing mushrooms. Is that based on true stories?
100%. In general, I understand there are comedians who, might do characters or have like some jokes that, maybe the joke is funny and doesn't have to match with reality. And I probably have had jokes like that over the years as well. But for the most part, if something seems like it could be true in my act, it is almost certainly true. I like people to know for sure. Like, obviously if I have a punchline where I turn into a dragon, well, that's definitely true on mushrooms. But otherwise, I think it should be pretty clear in my act what things are real and what things are like jokey punchlines versus real punchlines or real setups. I feel like for a lot of comedy, if the setup isn't true, then the joke doesn't make as much sense or have as much point or resonance. Like, if you watch The Daily Show, and you would never say, like, I wonder if that news story really happened that they're making all the jokes about. Yeah. So the framework of, what I'm presenting is, I'm not going to say 100%, like there might be a time when a joke is purely just a joke because it seemed like it would be a fun thing to do. But at this point, I would usually point that out as well, like that, hey, this one, sometimes I will say, like, this one's just going to be for fun. There's nothing real or meaningful or valuable or philosophical. This one's just going to be silly. But for the most part, like when I say, I've done mushrooms or I am in an open relationship or whatever my beliefs are, whatever my goals are, whatever my, life philosophies are, or specific things that I've done, pretty much almost everything. I'll stick with, nearly everything that I've said just because I can't remember everything specifically. Is true unless it seems obviously false. Okay.
So I bet when you were taking some mushrooms, did you think to yourself, oh, I can make a comedy bit out of this?
I definitely, like, I've done mushrooms enough that I don't go in expecting something specific, but almost always I will come out with sort of, I'll have my digital recorder that I use to record joke ideas and other kinds of ideas, and it will usually end up being pretty full by the end of, a mushroom session. Not to say that it's full of comedy, like it'll be maybe, say like if I record, I remember like one time maybe I recorded 64 ideas, and maybe half of them were just sort of, nice life things that I wasn't planning on talking about on stage, and maybe half of them were things that I'm like, this could be funny. Yeah. And then of those 32 things that I thought could be funny, probably only maybe a quarter of them would make it into the act ultimately, because some of them only made sense in the moment or weren't actually as funny as I thought they were when I thought them. But it's all, that's similar to the process of even when I'm not on mushrooms. If I write 100 jokes, most of them don't end up in the final act.
Yep. Okay, last email is from Mahogany Saint. What was the worst / most embarrassing thing you did when you were younger?
Let's see. I guess I don't know that I've done a ton of things that I would call the worst. I mean, obviously, one thing that I've done, if anything, is if I've done bad things, which I'm certainly not perfect. I'm a flawed, fallible human being. I guess the embarrassing thing that I would share is I remember when I moved from the first place that I grew up when I was about 12. So sometime before I was 12, and I think several years before, but I'm not sure exactly when. I think I was like, a single-digit age, a child that I hope, makes it so it's easier to be kind and judge less. But I think I, had an accident, and so I had some underwear that I was embarrassed about, and I think I was old enough that, that quote-unquote shouldn't have happened, or I didn't think it should have happened at the time. Like, I wasn't in diapers anymore, certainly.
Yeah.
And so I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anybody, and I just sort of hid that underwear, like, behind the boiler in the boiler room, and then forgot about it, or clearly didn't forget about it, but didn't think about it for years until we moved away, and I was like, ooh, I wonder if that will ever be found, and I'm sorry. So whoever moved into that house, if you ever located that secret / not secret shame, I apologize, and I hope that is embarrassing enough for you.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions I have. Where can people go to see more of your comedy?
Well, my website, pretty much you can put my name, Myq Kaplan, into anywhere on the internet. You can MyqKaplan.com. You can go get my albums on iTunes. You can watch my special on Netflix. You can listen to my podcast called Hang Out With Me on the Keith and the Girl Network at keithandthegirl.com/hang. You can, Facebook, Twitter. I put jokes every day.
Yep.
Vines and Instagrams. Where YouTube. You can feel free to write me at Gmail. Like, anywhere you put Myq Kaplan, you'll find something.
Yeah.
And thanks for looking at it and listening to me, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. I think you're a really funny guy, and hopefully we can talk to you again sometime.
I appreciate it. Same
All right.
here.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.